Welcome to the cityCURRENT Show, powered by Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services.
This show focuses on sharing good news and powering the good in our community. Now here's your host, cityCURRENT CEO, Jeremy Park.
Welcome back to the cityCURRENT Show, powered by Higginbotham. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference and powering the good. And we always love having our cityCURRENT speakers come on the show. In this case, we're talking about a new book, some really exciting news, and a whole lot more. We have Ben Utecht. He is a Super Bowl winning tight end. He's also a best-selling author. He's a speaker. He's a singer. He's so much more, and an entrepreneur as well. He is the founder of SoleCareRx. We'll talk about that. But Ben, how are you doing, buddy?
Man, Jeremy, I'm so excited to be with you, man. And Nashville was an awesome event. I can't wait to be in Memphis. Everything you're doing is just exciting and incredibly transformational. So thanks for having me on. Absolutely.
Well, you did. You spoke in Nashville at our Signature Speaker Series event there. You're speaking in Memphis in August, and so super excited to carry this forward. You yourself, heavily involved in philanthropy, a big supporter of Samaritan's Feet, so that's kind of the through line on our end, and you being generous to donate a big part of your honorariums to support our shoe distributions, to bless hundreds of kids locally in each city, so thank you for that. But let's give listeners and viewers a chance to kind of get to know you a little bit, and then we'll talk about you as an entrepreneur, as an author. But you are a Super Bowl winning, champion tight end. And so give us a little bit of your background in sports and how that led you into this conversation around culture and leadership and entrepreneurship.
Man, where to begin? I grew up in a small river town in Minnesota called Hastings, literally on the Mississippi. And it was a thriving sports community. Football became the sport that was really giving me the strongest platform to play at the next level. Was blessed to earn a scholarship at the University of Minnesota, so I got to stay home and play in front of my family and friends, which was very special. Had a great career as a tight end. Went on to play in the NFL. Was blessed to be on the Super Bowl champion Indianapolis Colts team, where I was coached by Hall of Famer Tony Dungy, and got to play with, I think, what's now 5 Hall of Famers that have come off of that team, from Peyton Manning, Dwight Freeney, Edgerrin James, Marvin Harris. I mean, the list goes on. It was such a special team to be a part of. And then went on to end my career with the Cincinnati Bengals. And then really launched into real life, which is a tougher transition than you would expect, right? But when you've played a sport your entire life and your identity has been wrapped up in one sport, finding yourself in the real world can be challenging. But thankfully I had music, I had business aspirations. My degree was public speaking. I knew that I wanted to be a storyteller. And when I retired, I asked that question, what's my story? And I couldn't get past what I experienced in Indianapolis playing for Tony Dungy, because he was the first to win a Super Bowl built on the power of servant leadership. If you build better men, you get better football players. And he showed me that culture doesn't have to be subjective, that it could be actually seen as an objective product, a tool that can be turned from strategy into a system that you can practice in order to get the behaviors out of your team that reflect the core values of the culture of the company. And that was it, man. And once I started telling that story, the doors just opened into the speaker world, the Fortune 500 community, ultimately a job as a chief culture officer in a private equity group in Minnesota, and then to the book and to entrepreneurialism. So it's been a fascinating journey, needless to say. Oh, and most importantly, I'm a dad and a husband. So I'm married to an incredible woman, and I am the father of 4 daughters. So pray for me every day.
Well, the other cool thing is award winner on the Tony Dungy Uncommon Leader Award. So really, when you talk about that experience and you building out this blueprint that you share in the book, The Champion's Creed, we'll talk all about that here in a second, but really powerful on being intentional for business leaders on how to build culture and building out this framework. And so before we talk about that though, let's talk about something that's fairly new but really exciting in terms of how it can impact the world. And that is Shower Sock. And as I mentioned, founder of SoleCareRx. Give us a little bit of that story.
Oh man, well, it's a personal story. When I was playing in Cincinnati in 2009, I got a pretty severe foot infection from the Bengals shower facility, wearing flip-flops, sandals. And when I retired and started working out at some of the fitness brands around the country, I just couldn't believe what the floors looked like. And that's with them cleaning the facilities once a day. And so I literally got on Amazon and I searched for an antibacterial, antifungal, disposable shower wearable. I was like, there's got to be something better than just wearing a sandal that I can just protect myself and then recycle it and feel safe. And it didn't exist. So I actually patented the first ever antibacterial, antifungal, disposable shower sock. And so we launched this last year and did really a soft launch at the Super Bowl in New Orleans just a few months ago, and are just getting ready to ramp up. It's exciting. It's one of those products where when you hear about it, you go, "That's never been made before." Yes, that's so common sense. And we make it incredibly affordable as a multi-use product, and it's just been incredibly exciting. So really, really hopeful for the future.
Carry that into when you talk about obviously youth, athletics, all of those applications, but the global side of this, because it ties into Samaritan's Feet as well. Give us a little bit of, what really becomes possible in terms of curing foodborne infection and some of those things globally.
Yeah, the market was much bigger than we thought. When we started doing our research and understanding what was the Mayo Clinic saying, what was NIH saying, WHO, Cleveland. I mean, all of these healthcare organizations acknowledge that 20 to 25% of the world's population suffers from skin infections at any given time. And just in the United States alone, we spend about $7 billion a year at podiatry clinics to treat the most common bacterial and fungal infections. And so that was a moment for us. It was like, oh, okay, there's a significant need here. And then you start looking globally into under-resourced countries, living in poverty. Enter Samaritan's Feet and building this incredible relationship with Manny Ohomne and his mission to distribute shoes to the under-resourced communities of the world. But then when you really get into what they face, Jeremy, walking on contaminated soil every single day, and diseases like mossy foot and the parasite infestation that impacts these children and families, and your heart just breaks because it's significant. And in a lot of these tribal communities, when you have some type of a skin disease, you're ostracized. So there's not only the physical, but there's the emotional, relational, and spiritual impacts that can have on an individual and their family. So now we're seeing this preventative product not only as a consumer opportunity in the United States, but this is really a philanthropic need around the world. And how can we enter a preventative option that can assist in keeping people safe from severe skin infection? So excited that fits into a philanthropic mission as well.
Yeah, super, super exciting. And so carry that into where people can go to learn more. So mention the website, and then we'll switch over and talk about the book.
Yeah, this is exciting. We just launched our new site, which is www.showersock.com. Very, very practical. And it's only $3 a pair, and you can wear a pair up to 3 to 5 times. Right. So we wanted to make it as affordable as possible, and we've been able to do that through our production process and packaging. And so please check out showersock.com. just to find out more information, what we're trying to do, both commercially, but also philanthropically.
Well, let's switch over and talk about the book because, as I mentioned, it's The Champion's Creed, Build Your Culture on the Power of Belief, being very intentional with the choices you make to build out a positive culture. And like you said, when you talk about just what you experienced with the Indianapolis Colts and Tony Dungy and just that sort of leadership, transcending necessarily just the football, but focusing on men, making better men, and how that led to success. It's kind of the same thing. When you focus on your team as people, it leads to success. Being intentional, it leads to success with the company. So talk about what led you to write this book.
I just found it very interesting that every organization on the planet goes through mission, vision, value processes, right? Every company, that's like a standard part of how every company launches. And yet, out of academia, out of organizational psychology, the definition for culture is that culture comes out of the espoused beliefs, assumptions, and artifacts, which are the symbols of those beliefs, out of every community in the world. So the foundation, the objective foundation of culture is not actually a value principle. It's the belief that lays the foundation to choose a value principle that's reflected of what that belief is. And that's why the title of the book is The Champion's Creed, because a creed is a set of beliefs that guide the behaviors and actions of people. And then I realized what Tony Dungy was doing in Indianapolis was he was actually taking an aligned belief system and building an objective game plan that we could practice not only to develop ourselves as better athletes, but more importantly, to develop ourselves as better men. If we're going to have the value principle of integrity on the wall, we better be aligned on what we believe about integrity, why we believe integrity matters, and most importantly, how we believe integrity should be practiced in the locker room, on the field, right? Or in corporate America, in the workplace. And so the heart, the soul of the book is really to inspire people towards understanding that the foundation of culture is belief. And that belief doesn't have to be subjective. It can become an objective product that becomes a blueprint that guides you towards practicing in a way to reflect your value principles, ultimately achieving the type of behaviors that lead to greater performance.
Yeah, I love that you provide a tangible framework, but you also provide very actionable items. And in your keynote, you pulled out some very specific instances around listening and communication and how those were practiced. So how you really put those into practice so that when you got to game day, it was already a part of the normal protocol and you were very used to it. So talk about, and you don't necessarily have to dive in too far into those stories because we want people to buy the book and see the keynote, but give us a little bit of an illustration of how this comes to life.
Yeah, so thank you for that. So, one of our core principles or one of our core values was to be a champion listener, as you talked about. Okay, I don't think there's any company or any leader in a company, in any organization that would say that listening doesn't matter, right? We all understand that listening is a value that has great qualities to it, but practically, how do we actually practice that on a daily basis? In Indianapolis, we had a culture of the huddle. And the most important element to a successful huddle is every player listening so that they can understand exactly what the play is. And the culture of the huddle was built around 3 practicable and tactical, simple options. Stop, look, and care. Right? The minute someone begins to speak, stop. Give them the stage of speech, the act of selflessness. Look is the pursuit of information. It's called active listening. Put your phone down. Put your computer down. Turn to that person. Look them in the eyes. Right? Show them that what they have to say is valuable. And care is the importance of empathy, right? To put yourself in the position of the person who's speaking. And so if you can apply an objective system like that, it gives you a framework to be more successful as a listener. And that's what we did across a number of different value principles in Indianapolis. and what we ultimately bring into business, right? How do we create a blueprint for an aligned belief system in an organization?
What do you hope that business leaders, readers, what do you hope that they take away from the book and are able to, push forward with them and their team and their companies?
I would love for them to be inspired towards seeing culture through a new lens, and that lens is that culture is the strategy, right? Peter Drucker said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast," and I like how that makes people feel. But I often push back on that because he separates culture from strategy, and I believe that what needs to be paramount in every organization is that culture is the strategy. How do we hire towards culture? How do we develop towards culture? Right? How do we create our KPIs towards culture? And how does it look in all of our departments? It needs to become an objective system that is always considered, right? Where it's not only about the transaction of kind of the business culture in general, but it's transactions that are reflected or are always striving towards being reflected in the core beliefs and values of an organization, and that you don't have to overthink it. Remember, culture it's such a big theme, and so it feels like a boulder that you have to pick up and throw into a lake. But the reality is that culture is a pebble game. It's about taking pebble after pebble and just continuing to throw it into the pond. And what you're doing is you're creating ripple effect after ripple effect, right? And that consistency over and over again begins to move the dial, right? And so connecting culture to revenue is critically important for the C-suite. And that seems to always be where a lot of tension is. So just understand that, whether it's MIT or Harvard Business or Gallup, the data on the impact a toxic culture has on attrition, on burnout, right, on performance is significant. I mean, we're talking high numbers, right? And hundreds of billions of dollars gone towards having to solve some of these issues because leadership doesn't take culture as serious as they should, right? So this has a huge impact on the bottom line of an organization, right? So once you see culture as a revenue driver, now you begin to realize how valuable it actually is. And it comes through foundational beliefs put into practice in order to improve performance.
Yeah, I love that culture is the strategy. And to your point, it's not a boulder you're throwing into the lake or the river, the water. It's constant pebbles. I love that illustration, that picture, that mental picture.
And I always say, like, when culture is the strategy, it eats every meal at every time of the day, right? It's not just breakfast, okay? When it's the strategy, it eats every meal at every time of the day. So.
Well, and all that paints the picture on why this book is so important. So wrap up with where we can go to follow you, to learn more about the book, to purchase the book, The Champion's Creed. Where do we go?
So you go to benutechtspeaks.com and you'll be able to learn about the book, purchase the book. So excited again to be with cityCURRENT in Memphis. We're going to have a great time. And remember, the book is inspirational, educational, and operational. So every chapter is going to use storytelling to inspire. It's going to bring in data, and it's going to bring in insights that are going to educate. And then it's going to give you practical and tactical ways in which you can implement and practice, culture in your life and in your business.
Yeah, good stuff. And so we're super excited. Thank you again for speaking in Nashville. We're looking forward to seeing you again here in Memphis. But Ben, thank you for all you do to power the good. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services is proud to power the cityCURRENT Show. We're a people-first company that protects what matters most, the families, businesses, and trailblazers that keep our community going. As one of the nation's top independent insurance firms, Higginbotham is a single-source solution for business insurance, employee benefits, HR services, and personal insurance that's customized for you. We're here to serve you, the people you care about, and your community. Call 866-377-1959 or visit higginbotham.com.